What's up, Covalence tubers? So, earlier this week, I had a student that wanted to know how we could maybe alter some of Morgan, the express logging middleware's behavior. And I thought that was kind of a good endeavor, especially considering that it is 3 years out of date. It just has not been updated in forever. So, we went through and we looked at how they accessed the response object after a response was sent, peeked at how they handled things under the hood, and we made some modifications of our own. And, it was pretty nice. It was, nice and lightweight. We got to make it a little more opinionated. So if you want to see like more color in your console logs, like fantastic. And that's exactly what we're going to be doing in this video. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So we'll get our project kicked off. I'll open up VS Code and get everything started. And I'm going to go ahead and install all of our packages. I need Express, and I'm going to go ahead and install Morgan as well, just so we have, some compare and contrast available to us. I'm going to also import Chalk, and there's actually Chalk's functionality does not work. It is not compatible with TypeScript in its newest version. The Chalk maintainers say themselves that for now you should just utilize version 4.0 if you are utilizing TypeScript. So we'll install version 4.0 with that. And then I'm going to install a library called onFinished, which is what Morgan itself actually utilizes under the hood. I also need to go ahead and grab those type definitions themselves. So npm I -d what am I doing? I need my types in my dev dependencies. Chalk has their own built-in types, which is nice. I need to grab the types for onFinished. And I'm also going to install TS Node and NodeMon for some quality of life features, just because I am, wanting to work with purely TypeScript files, and I'm not going to bother setting up a bundler in this video. So I'm going to make a source code folder with a server.ts. And then I'm going to make a little script here. So the reason why I installed TS Node alongside NodeMon is because with TS Node as part of your dependencies, NodeMon can actually watch and execute TypeScript files without any additional config setup, which is pretty cool in case you haven't utilized that before. So I'll just tell NodeMon to watch and rerun server.ts. And that's it. And now I have my little dev script. So I'm going to import Express. I'm going to import Morgan, just because we will be using that, like I said, for compare and contrast. And by the way, the thing that I want to kind of emulate is Morgan, but in dev mode. I know that it's really, configurable as far as the logging format. In this video, we are just going to create one logger that does just one single, format. And that dev format is the request method itself. So you'll have post, and then you'll have the path, and then the status code, and then you'll have the duration of time in milliseconds as well. So that's kind of what we're doing, but I want to do a lot of conditional stuff with all of this. So we'll go ahead and create our Express app here. And we will tell our app to listen on a port. Ugh, what am I doing? And we will have that callback function just logging servers back up upon our server starting. So I'm going to tell our app to utilize Morgan's dev mode. And then we will create our middleware separately and apply it here beneath. So that way for every request we get to see, theirs juxtaposed with ours. I need to make a few routes for us to test out. So I'll have some routes that, are of a varied amount of request verbs. And then I will also, have some send a variety of status codes or some that are just deliberately slow. So we can get kind of a good, healthy variety of responses. So geez, I cannot type today, can I? We'll send a good status for that. We'll have a slow response here. And we'll eventually resolve. I'm just going to stick everything in a set timeout and delay this response for, we'll say 1 second. And we'll still have it be a good status code. Or we'll make it a delete request too. So I just want to kind of highlight a variety of requests, and then I'll make a put request. So we'll just kind of do like the typical CRUD routes: get, post, put, delete. And we'll pretend this has some kind of like authentication on it. So we'll just send a 401 status code. Okay, so just wanted to throw out some, garbage responses, but just something that's testable. So for us to see these in action, I'm going to start our server here, and I need to pull up Postman and get these routes documented. So we have a get request to API wow. So let me add a request. Get wow. All right, we'll save it, we'll run it. So we get our status code back. Let me go ahead and make our post. And that's the same URL, just a post request. We get our 201 status code back, so that was a healthy response. We need a delete request for API slow, remembering that this request we are deliberately delaying that down. And so the execution was just a little over 1 second. And then we'll go ahead and we are going to make an update. We'll make a put request. And I think I put yo as the URL. It really doesn't matter. I just wanted some variety of stuff in my terminal. And one of the things that I wanted additionally, oh yeah, and so we sent up a bad status code in this instance. So one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to have my HTTP verbs match Postman's coloring in my terminal. And we have the ability to do that with our own custom middleware. So to see what it looks like with Morgan, it's kind of plainly colored, and then they will have the status code either green or yellow based upon whether or not it was good or bad. They do have this one extra property here, and that is the status code response length. So okay, okay, accepted, and then unauthorized. Those are my statuses that were getting sent back. That's the length of each one of those strings. Okay, accepted, unauthorized. But I never really care about that. And like if you send like an array of data, like it's gonna be like thousands of characters. I mean, I never really care about that, context. So we're doing away with that. All right, but let's go recreate our own. So I'm gonna create not Morgan. I'll hyphenate that. Well, I'll underscore it to match the function name. I named the folder itself hyphenated, but since I'm going to be naming the function with an underscore, because I have to, I'll name the file that way as well. Okay. So we'll import chalk from chalk and onFinished from onFinished. I'm also going to import the request handler interface from Express because I'm going to use that to describe our function. Because yet again, keeping everything nice and type safe. And this is going to be really handy for us too because we get our request, response, and next objects automatically typed just from having our function typed as a request handler. So I can say const not Morgan I can type this as a request handler. And if I have a rec, res, and next object here, or I can name it pizza, spaghetti, stromboli, doesn't matter. They would all be typed as the express request, express response, and the express next function. So all of that, typing gets automatically applied if you declare a function as a request handler, which is convenient. So, a few things I want to do is I want to grab and extract out of our request the request method and then the URL as well. So we're going to kind of build up our string, piece by piece. So const method is going to be rec.method. Const URL is going to be rec.original URL, just kind of pulling those off. And then we don't have status code or the response time yet. And that was kind of why I never really looked into this in the past. I was like, oh, that's weird. How do they have, scope of it after the response is already sent? Well, the onFinished function is a really cool callback wrapper that, you pass in the res object, and after it sends its response, the callback function itself executes, and that way you can do some really cool stuff. I can do like a start timer here, so we can observe the duration it took the request to execute. So I can say we'll grab the Unix timestamp, and basically from there we can just go ahead and use onFinished. So onFinished has that response object that we need to pass it, and then it has that callback function where we have full scope of the response after it's been sent. So within here, I'll go ahead and immediately get our timer finished. So we'll get our end time minus our start time. And that gets us the duration of the request. If we want to see the status code, well, we have the response object. And there we go. So we really have all the bits of information I care about now. What we need to do is also, I need to, invoke next, the next function here, because I want this to behave kind of like Morgan, where This is going to be a top-level middleware. Every request will filter through here and immediately get passed on to the next one. It's just we also have this onFinished callback get attached to the response object, so when it actually does finish, we can have this downstream code execute and have a really cool console log fire. So one of the things I wanted to do is I found this a little too plain. So what I wanted is I wanted to make my verbs match what they looked like in Postman. I like green for get, I like this orangish yellow for post, I like red for deletion, and I like blue for put. So we can stylize those, very easily with chalk. So I can do something like this. And we don't have to do that in the onFinished callback either. Some of these we can like pre-style, so like I don't have to cram all of my code in that callback if I know that I have my method and then the URL defined before it finishes, obviously, because that's info from the request, not necessarily from the response. So I can say like const let me do this, let styled method. We'll just initialize that variable, and we'll do a case statement on method. Or a switch. Sorry, my brain is total soup today. So we'll just switch on method. I'll say case. We'll start with get. I like get as our starting case. We'll say styled method is equal to chalk dot, I'll say green, not green bright, that's like a lime greenish almost. We'll do green, and this is just kind of like following CSS conventions. A color is going to be the text color. You have to specifically enumerate the BG color for a background color. And we can also make it bold here too. And this is just stylizing the word get, so we can just like always put method here. All right, so I'm just gonna do some Control-C, Control-V. Okay, post I said I wanted to do with that yellowish color. Put is that blue. Delete, definitely a red, very solidly red. And we'll have our default case. I'll do some like gray text too, just to kind of like distinguish it from the white text. Yeah, we'll go with gray. Okay, so this gives us a stylized word, which is a small start, but it's getting there. So styled method is defined, and then we will eventually console log utilizing that in our onlyFinished callback. So let's see, what is the return type? Let's see, chalk function. Definitely not. Oh, it just returns a string? Okay. Okay, cool. So it's just returning a string, I guess, with like the ANSI escape characters, which is actually how Morgan handled its own color variations, which explains why there's so few, because they were doing them by hand. But this way, with chalk, we have a lot more granular flexibility. So let's see. Next up, we have the URL. The URL I can just stylize as, I don't know, I might also do just gray text with that. Or we can just leave it as is, you know. Why not? The status code. I want to determine whether or not that was a good status code or not. So we can see if the code is in a certain range. And in this case, I'll just do an if statement or a couple. Oops, if code is greater than or equal to 200 and code is less than 400. And for this, I'll do the bright green. So I'll say chalk dot bright green. Or green bright. There we go. And we'll just pass, you know, the code into that. So just a general, like you have the, you know, full flexibility of doing whatever you want here. Actually, maybe I'll just do regular green here. So I don't want to like make it stick out too much. I'm going to kind of follow like design principles that I learned from Tailwind CSS, which is emphasizing by de-emphasizing. So I want to make basically my errors stick out a little bit more. So if you do have an error, then by making the green stick out less, and if I make the error red and bold, it's going to stick out just a little bit further. So we're trying to kind of avoid like alarm fatigue here. So we'll set styled code equal to red bright, and we'll see how this is. We can play around with the colors. And then otherwise, if we have like a status code from like the 100 series, we can just keep it gray. And for the response time as well, I do want to do some conditional styling with that. Now this is kind of arbitrary, but let's say we want to see if a request completes within like 200 or so milliseconds, and we'll kind of use that as our litmus test for a, you know, good response versus slow. So I'll create a variable here. And we can just do a little ternary and say if the amount of milliseconds was greater than 200, we will let's see, how should we format this? If it was greater than that, we'll do some background colors. So I'll actually do BG red. That might be too bold. We'll see how it turns out. You know, we can play around with this a little bit. That's the nice part about this is you can kind of opinionate this exactly how you see fit. So if it's that way, let's see. The way I want them to appear is in a set of parentheses with the number and the letters MS after it for milliseconds. So gray text if it is under 200 milliseconds, and if it's over 200 milliseconds, it's going to have a bright red background. And I think that's white text by default, so I'm actually going to specify black text here too. So with all of that being said, our middleware is actually done here. I'll get rid of my unused import here, and let's go ahead and export not Morgan from this file. And we will see just how this looks, and we can play around with these colors. as we see fit. So app.use and then not Morgan. VS Code will help me auto import that named import. So we've got this, request handler coming through. It's just a regular old Express middleware, and it's going to do what Morgan is doing, but maybe in a way we prefer better. So let's see. I hate VS Code's integrated terminal, so I'm actually going to close out of that and launch our server from here. And now I am going to go back to Postman and just make every request in series. Or, conveniently enough, if you weren't familiar with this function, the Postman collection runner is really handy. It allows you to run an entire collection or folders within a collection as a series of requests. You can choose which ones to do, in what order, and here I'm just doing it so I can run all 4 of my requests with one click, just making it nice and easy. And here we are. So we have their request above and then mine below. So our timers might be evaluating stuff in kind of different places. So we have a variance of somewhere between like 1 and 3 milliseconds in places, but overall it seems to be pretty accurate. So I just have get, post, put, and delete in their own respective colors. Same color text for the URL. I don't really want to emphasize that. Status code is green if it's all good, red if it's bad. They do like an orange yellowish one for 401, and I think they have other status codes with slightly different colors, but I don't really know what those designate. And like I was saying about emphasizing by de-emphasizing, I purposefully make the response time like grayed out, very muted, unless it's slow, in which case we will kind of highlight it strongly. Since we got to see what Morgan looked like compared to ours, let me go ahead and remove it, and we can just check out not Morgan's functionality. The nice part about that collection runner with Postman again is I just hit run again, and it hits up all 4 of them. So now we have some slightly more colorful logs, our get, post, put, delete, and I don't really like the red background. I kind of actually prefer this inverted, where it's just a regular black background but with red text. So let's go swap that over. And we can make it bold as well. So I'll just do red, and instead of black text, it's red text, so we don't want to just immediately override it. But here we'll make it bold red. I feel like having the methods be bold too, that's kind of detracting away from other things too. So, like I said, I want to avoid alarm fatigue. So I'm trying to, make these stick out maybe a little bit, but not make it the sole focus of everything. And so we'll clear these out. We'll hit run again. And that's pretty solid. So I like the color coordination of the methods here, just because it matches up a little bit with Postman, and that makes brain chemicals go burr. I don't really care about the URL. I mean, styling wise, like it's great context when you're in debug mode. And as far as the status codes go, you can get really granular with however you want to handle it. All that is the if statement down here checking specific status codes. You could do a case statement, after you do these ranges, reassign it to maybe a specific, 400 series status code or 500 series status code if you wanted to get really granular. So you have full control of that. And the time, definitely a huge improvement over regular Morgan. For me, it felt like that was kind of like attention grabby at the end, but here, just keeps it nice and muted if it's a healthy-ish response time. And I mean, this is the most bold part of every request. Like that sticks out so much out of all of them. So that's really helpful, just seeing a very slow request. Let's see. I'll get rid of the slow deletion, go through like 10 iterations, so we'll have a bunch of logs populate. That's another good thing that Postman's collection runner is good for. I just ran like 30 requests, and if you're using this to, seed a database with a bunch of data, then like sweet, you have a lot of great functionality. Oh, whoops, I didn't realize I left 15 or 10 iterations on, but yeah, so here we have a large swath of like healthy response code times, and then boom, so it makes our logs really, really stick out. And you can kind of like gloss over these, but the reds without being bold here stand out, and then here being that kind of red and bold just sticks out a whole lot. So it's kind of weird that we're putting so much emphasis into design for server-side logs, but hey, it makes you pay attention and makes you see stuff very effectively and easily. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed getting to see what it takes to kind of create your own Morgan-like clone, or at least, replacing the functionality of their dev mode. If you like this video, please leave a comment and subscribe if you haven't done so. And if you want to see other videos in the future on similar topics, just throw a topic idea out in the comments, and we'd love to hear it and consider it. All right, thanks, and see y'all later.